My name is Iva Etta Sullivan, and it is thanks to my bequest that this cultural center exists. I grew up in this area. I graduated from Zionsville High School. I even taught nearby. In 1904, when my father passed away, I moved to Hollywood and then Washington, D.C., never intending to return to Indiana. But after decades and decades of being alone, hearing the voices from those beyond the grave, I came to a conclusion. There comes a time in each person's life when he must consider his history, his legacy, his purpose. My great-grandfather, Patrick Henry Sullivan, was one of the first residents of Zionsville. He built a log cabin on this very land before the thought of Zionsville even was formed. He owned 280 acres of property in Boone County. This was when the state of Indiana was still an infant. At the time of my death in 1966, the only close family I had was not of the flesh, but of the world beyond, the ghosts of my forefathers. History deserved my fortune because it was my forefathers who made me the person that I was. And so I left the bulk of my estate to the town in order to preserve history. Only a few friends knew of my plans, and they were sworn to secrecy. It was such a surprise, and my instructions were so vague that the town of Zionsville took several years to figure out how to honor my wishes. It's quite fitting that the place created to preserve the history of the entire county also boasts a large genealogy library. It's rather ironic that the other person responsible for this cultural center never again lived in Zionsville after her young formative years. Perhaps that illustrates what an impact this charming community can have on a person's soul, how it can rest in one's heart. Mary Elizabeth Hopkins Munce donated funds from the bulk of her estate to establish an arts annex, specifically to support art instruction in the community, so that it may be available to anyone regardless of race, creed, color, religion, age, or gender. Thanks to her donation, we now have the combined SullivanMunce Cultural Center to celebrate the facets of history, genealogy, and art that come together so beautifully in events such as the annual Ghost Walk, where we celebrate the arts with our performance, genealogy with research of real people, and history as we present to you true stories, and indeed each of these stories is true, painstakingly researched to ensure that while we never know exactly what was said, there is truth behind each tale. And please, consider a donation to the SullivanMunce Cultural Center. Even though my bequest started the museum, it is only through continued support that it can remain present and art and history can remain alive in our community. Thank you to our sponsors who have made this event possible.
The 2020 Virtual Ghost Walk is brought to you by Wolber CPAs, David Roush Studio, Mid-States Insurance, Boone County Convention and Visitors Bureau, Zionsville Eye Care, and Community Foundation of Boone County. And be sure to stop by the SullivanMunce gift shop for locally made goods and apparel.
And now we welcome you to our 2020 Virtual Ghost Walk!
Autumn in the 1880s was filled with wheat being sown, plenty of rain, buildings and homes being built. With days growing shorter and nights longer, some people would spend time outside searching for comets in the night sky. They didn't have computers or television to occupy their time. But you never know what you might happen upon in the woods at night.
Mary, did you hear that?
Of course I
I did. I think it's following us again.
What are you two talking about?
The hound, Mother.
It's been 2 months since that hound followed you. Why does it still scare you so?
It's following us, Mother.
Don't be ridiculous. That dog is dead.
That night was terrible, Mother. The sun had just disappeared over the western swamps. Everything was silent and still, and we were going to find some comets in the sky. I remember it as if it were yesterday. The moon had just started to rise when that large black dog appeared in front of us. That is when we yelled out in fear. Without thinking twice, we took off running through the ponds, thickets, treetops, briar patches, and were left covered in scratches, gasping for breath. Why, we ran a half mile. That was the fastest I ever run. Which isn't saying much. Fortunately, I only had to run faster than you. But it was in that fleeting moment, as we turned to look back, the dog keeled over and died. I still can't believe the dog died like that, right in front of us. We still hear that cursed hound following us everywhere.
What's wrong?
Don't you hear the howling, Mother? It won't stop.
I hear nothing.
When will that dog stop following us? Mary, why are we even outside?
It was reported in the newspaper weeks later that they still never venture out after the sun goes down. All on account of that dog that appeared before them nights before, and still follows them to this day.
North of Zionsville, along Michigan Road past the subdivision Hickory Hall Polo Club, you will find Slab Town Road, which led to the community of Slab Town. This area is very rural, and more than 100 years ago was even less populated. One night in 1883, a newspaper editor set out to verify a report from local coon hunters and others who encountered strange experiences when passing through the area. The pragmatic editor was skeptical he would find anything, and brought along 2 friends, veteran soldiers, to be his witnesses. These men had experienced battles at Bull Run, Antietam, Shiloh, and Gettysburg, and never flinched. When they returned from their outing, they immediately ran to the newspaper office to report their story.
Edward, get this down. It was awful. I'd hardly believe it if I hadn't been there, if we hadn't been there. It happened.
What are you talking about, Andy?
So, you know, the hunters out near Slab Town that said they had heard noises. So I grabbed the colonel, I grabbed the sheriff, and we went out there to investigate. In fact, the sheriff thought they might be on the sauce. So we get into that area in the woods west of Slab Town, and we hear horrible noises. Tell him, Colonel.
There were noises. There were definitely noises. Tell them how they came from everywhere. They were unearthly. They started to the right and then they moved to the left. Tell them how they came from below. Oh, yeah. They started above us and then they moved below. It was indescribable, as if thousands of little voices were crying out in agony, but unlike anything I've ever heard. Tell them about the big voice. There's this big booming voice, a voice that couldn't be comprehended. It seemed to fill the air. Then it stopped suddenly. All at once.
That was it. It stopped. We thought that was it. I mean, that's what the hunters reported. So we were ready to leave. But then...
Tell them about the music. I'm getting there. There was music. The most beautiful music. Tell them how you cried. Oh, hush you. It was the most haunting music I'll ever hear. It was the sound of stringed instruments. Then complete silence. We waited, but the silence continued, so we cocked our guns and had knives at the ready. We didn't know who or what was out there, but we were prepared to fight. We approached this enormous tree, moving slowly.
And then from behind the tree jumped out a living skeleton with fiery eyes, and he lit up the night sky like it was daylight.
In his right hand was a sword that had to be 20 feet long, and in his left was a shield. Tell him what the shield said. It said, "Die thou must."
So I gave the command to fire. We unloaded dozens of rounds on this whatever it was to destroy it, and it turned into 1,000 little skeletons with horrid faces.
Some had bodies of alligators. I saw those with heads of horses, others with bodies of serpents. Then it all simply disappeared.
Have you three been at the pub?
Edward, I'm telling you, this happened. I saw it, we saw it, and I'm willing to go to the masses and testify to it.
He did tell the other newspapers what he had experienced, and while some nearby editors trusted him enough to print their story, those papers were belittled by their readers for spreading false information.
In the 1880s, newspapers were growing rapidly throughout central Indiana. Subscriptions usually cost $1, but the cost to produce the papers wasn't cheap. Much of the paper was filled with advertisements, but they had to fill the rest with as much content as they could find, including the comings and goings of visitors and reports from other communities.
Today in school, we read President Garfield's inauguration speech. The Zionsville newspaper printed the entire thing.
And Evelyn said her Lebanon paper only printed a few words. Must have been a quiet week in Zionsville to have all that room for it.
I'm so excited we have a new president. It's just the beginning of years and years and years President Garfield will have to lead the country. Mother, that looks like the Thorn Town Cyrus wagon. I wonder why it's here.
I believe you're right. Certainly looks like it.
Who's Thorn Town Cyrus?
Don't you remember Cyrus March, dear? The man from Thorn Town? He drives all around Indiana in his wagon and stops to play his accordion in the street.
Oh, yes. He has that little dog that dances to the music. He called that dog the greatest trained dog on earth. Well, he must not care that much for his dog because he forgot it.
Come here, puppy.
What are all these blankets he left?
Oh, heavens! It's Cyrus!
What's wrong with him?
His body is cold as ice. Oh, dear. I'm afraid he's dead. Olive, run to the dispatch office. Let the reporter know we found Cyrus dead in his wagon. I'm sure his family in Thorn Town will want to know.
And so, on March 17th, 1881, it was reported throughout Boone and neighboring counties that Cyrus March, nicknamed Thorn Town Cyrus because of his hometown, was found dead in his wagon. It was reported that he had expired several hours before being found. And that report was corrected the following week when he walked into Thorn Town, a few days later very much alive. Thorn Town Cyrus was also known for having a very curious companion, a wax doll that he cared for very carefully. Those who knew him well knew that he missed his dead mother so terribly that the doll was the only thing that would comfort him.
I'm Nicole Kabrowski.
My name is Michael Kabrowski.
We give ghost walks and bus tours. We also do investigations for fundraisers for haunted locations.
We do the research together, and we really believe in love paranormal.
We've seen everything from headless bodies, bodiless heads, body parts, full apparitions. We've been touched, poked, I've been scratched.
We've seen shadow people, we've seen mists, we've seen lights that we couldn't place where they came from, the whole gamut.
I've heard death rattles in a room where somebody died. We kind of take a common sense approach when we do investigations, and we believe that paranormal experiences are caused by people most often. And people are people. People are going to do what they're going to do in life, so they're going to do what they're going to do in death. And so when we're working with people who have, they're either scared or they're concerned about what's in their homes, it's like, okay, first of all, is the power of suggestion, what's going on? We really want to find out what's going on and kind of calm them a little bit. We just want them to know that it's not like what you see on TV. Not everything is considered, bad or evil or whatever. I think the vast majority of hauntings are just people being people. If you're good in life, you're going to be good in death. And if you're bad in life, you're probably going to be bad in death too. And you just kind of have to take control of your house and say, this is my house. And you have to let them know what you want. Either they can stay with some rules or they can get out.
The calls we get into for investigations vary very much from year to year. I would say probably half and half.
I would say half and half. I think that would be fair. Maybe even more than half are not paranormal. And the reason that I say that is we have a really strenuous vetting process. I mean, we get down and we dig down. We ask a lot of personal questions because we had somebody that we were helping, and she said that she saw colored symbols like the hashtag or the pound sign for us old people. She would see them in color. She was epileptic, and there were studies done where epileptics see those sorts of things. And I want everything to be paranormal, but there are just some times when you go in and they're either just wanting attention, or they're mistaken, or they didn't take something into consideration.
On the flip side also, of course, if we go someplace and we can't find a scientific explanation of something that they think is a haunting, it could just be that it's not happening while we are there. I mean,
because it's communicating with them, and maybe it doesn't want to communicate with us. Well, I think everybody has the right to be skeptical. We're not out to convert everybody. We're not out to convert anybody, really. We have had people on our tours that have been converted. We gave the tour in Westfield. There was a spirit that we saw inside this building, and the skeptic of the group was with me, and I said, shine your flashlight in there, and he's like, you saw it too. And he was like, oh, I will never look at this the same way again, because he saw exactly what I did. He saw a figure of a man very high up. It must have been 7 feet up, and it was a very clear outline of his face. And he was like, and nobody else saw it but the two of us.
You can contact us on our Facebook page, unseenpress.com, Historic Indiana Ghost Walks and Tours. We have a website, unseenpress.com, phone number 317-840-6456, and we're on Twitter and Instagram too, but those are the main ones where you can find us and see our tour schedule. We have tours scheduled through November 14th for this year, and
our investigations are listed there as well. And then you can also find our books on our website and at Amazon.
Happy Halloween!
A month before World War I ended, Zionsville was in the midst of a different global situation.
Jane, what are you doing here? You're supposed to be in school.
The teacher sent everyone home. She said it was because of the sickness. I think it's pneumonia.
Do you mean pneumonia?
Yes, that's the word. And she said we had to stay home and not leave our house.
Not leave our house? For how long? Margaret, is that you? And Evelyn? Whatever are you wearing?
My Loretta has come down with the influenza. The health department has given us masks to wear.
That must be horrible.
It's actually a lot of fun. It's like a game. And it keeps my face warm when the nights are so chilly. Plus, no one knows it's me. I'm like a German spy.
Well, Jane and her classmates were sent home from school and told not to return. I guess I'll have plenty of help getting the house prepared for winter. They won't have anything else to keep their time occupied.
Public meetings are closed as well. The health department is requesting that people cough into a handkerchief or cloth and avoid spitting in public.
This pneumonia and influenza is serious business. Here are the rules from the health authorities. Number 1, all colds, however slight, should be treated as possible attacks of influenza, and they say we should stay home if we're sick. Number 2, avoid feeling or spreading fear of the disease, and I suppose it's better to spread fear than influenza. Number 3, avoid crowds. We have about 900 people in Zionsville. I don't think we have to worry one lick about that one. Number 4, regulate bodily functions and keep them so. I suppose that means the outhouse requires plenty of use. Number 5, avoid the breath or expelled secretions from people suffering from colds. You two have us beat on that one right now. And you know what? I just saw an ad for a Spawn's compound remedy to help us with all this. Now where is it? Aha! It says, influenza, fever, pink eye, shipping fever, all diseases of the horse afflicting his throat, speedily cured.
Father, diseases of the horse? I think you're reading the wrong section.
The schools were closed for a month, and public meetings resumed around November 7th. just in time for a huge bonfire a few days later to celebrate Armistice Day. This illness was known as the Spanish flu because that country chose to notify other nations of the illness rather than hide it. Fort Benjamin Harrison was hit hard with 3,000 patients. Indianapolis had 6,000 cases. In all, the state lost 3,266 Hoosiers to the pandemic. But with an epidemic rate of 290 per 100,000 people, it had one of the lowest rates in the country. This was attributed to how well Indianapolis and state officials worked together to implement community mitigation measures. This did not happen in other states.
143 years ago, on February 3, 1877, Susan B. Anthony spoke to a large audience in Zionsville at this location, now Rush on Main. She gave a speech at Mr. Clark's Hall, the opera house in town. She demanded a woman's right to share in the government women helped to support. In 1877, she was likely gathering signatures on petitions to present to Congress. She visited 26 states and gathered over 10,000 signatures. While her exact speech in Zionsville was not reported, she spoke these same words at dozens of other events that year to encourage women to sign her petition.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We have a unique opportunity to hear Miss Anthony speak in the little town of Zionsville tonight. She's traveling the country gathering signatures for the cause of all women. Miss Gage, would you care to do the introduction?
Before we begin, I would like to recite a portion of the Declaration of Sentiments signed at the Seneca Falls Convention of 1848. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men and women are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights that among those include life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Thank you, Miss Anthony, for being here with us tonight to enlighten us about women requesting the ability to vote in our elections.
It is said women do not need the ballot for their protection because they are supported by men. Statistics show that there are 3 million women in this nation supporting themselves. In the crowded cities of the East, they are compelled to work in shops, stores, and factories for the merest pittance. In New York alone, there are over 50,000 of these women receiving less than 50 cents a day. There are grave questions of moral as well as material interest in which women are most deeply concerned. Denied the ballot the legitimate means with which to exert their influence, and as a rule, being lovers of peace, they have recourse to prayers and tears, those potent weapons of women and children, and when they fail, must tamely submit to wrong or rise in rebellion against the powers that be. Women crusade against gambling dens, emptying kegs and bottles into the streets, breaking doors and windows, and burning houses, all go to prove that disenfranchisement. The denial of lawful means to gain the desired ends may drive even women to violations of law and order. Hence, to secure both national and domestic tranquility, to establish justice, to carry out the spirit of the Constitution, put into the hands of all women as you have into those of all men, the ballot. That symbol of perfect equality, that right, protective of all other rights.
Now, we'd like to call for a vote of all the ladies present. Who here desire the vote?
Aye! Thank you, Miss Anthony, for your presence here this evening. Now, who out there is going to sign this petition?
Oh, how I wish I could be here a century from now to see all this hard work come to fruition. And we have so much more work to do.
I will continue to work for the rights of women for as long as it takes.
The 19th Amendment, which guaranteed a woman's right to vote, was ratified in 1920, exactly 100 years ago. It took the women of this country 70 years of pauseless campaigning to gain the right to vote. Susan B. Anthony's lecture in Zionsville was so successful, her partner in women's rights, Elizabeth Cady Stanton, came and spoke in Zionsville later that year and again in 1879. They worked as a team. Mrs. Anthony often said that Mrs. Stanton was the brains of the new association, while she herself was merely its hands and feet. But in truth, the two women worked marvelously together, For Mrs. Stanton was a master of words and could write and speak to perfection of the things Susan B. Anthony saw and felt, but could not herself express.
Most people know that Zionsville's name comes from developer William Zion, and Lebanon was named for the biblical city. Another major community in Boone County, Thorn Town, got its name because there were a great many trees growing in the area, with large, sharp thorns on them. Thorn Town is along the Big 4 railroad line, halfway between Lafayette and Indianapolis. But it was inhabited far earlier than either of those communities, or Lebanon, or Zionsville. In the town is a grassy, sloping hill, and along the hill was a big tree that laughed and cried. Janie's home was on this hill, and the tree was next to her window.
Looks like another windy night. It's only a matter of time before Mother Nature brings this tree down. I better get to it first.
No, Dad, please don't. The tree sings to me.
Sings to you?
Yes, when the branches swing in the wind, it sings tee-hee, tee-hee, ooh-ah, ooh-ah, lolly, lolly.
Well, it will be a lot of work to bring it down. I suppose it's sturdy enough for now.
Do you want to play? This tree's amazing. It could fit 100 people in it. Sure, Ted. What should we play? Can we put a swing up there? Rope is so scarce and expensive. How will we ever get some? I know. Let's pull some grapevine from the base. Skeleton! There's a hole in the wood and it has a skeleton in it! Ah!
Long before, when the Miami lived in the area, a native man lived under that tree. It is said that his little girl had died and he could not bear the thought of putting her in the ground. So he climbed up and cut a place in the limb and laid her there, where she could swing in the breezes and the birds would sing to her. Janie's dad put a piece of wood over the skeleton in the branch to protect it from the rain. That night, the wind blew gently, and Janie heard the sounds again. And she was comforted. Soon fall came, and one night it turned cold suddenly, and rain turned to sleet, and the wind blew so hard that Janie heard crying and wailing. Suddenly, the branch cracked and fell to the ground.
Where's the little girl?
There was no sign of the skeleton, but around the tree she found 2 copper rings and some beads. Janie never heard any more singing and laughing in the tree after that, but she kept the rings and the beads to remember the little girl that so often sang her to sleep.
On Monday, February 11, 1861, Lincoln began his journey to Washington, D.C. for his inauguration as the 16th President of the United States. Lincoln's train made a number of stops in Boone County that afternoon, including Thorn Town, Lebanon, and Zionsville. We also know that some of the more boisterous Hoosiers greeted the President with the following cry: "How are you, old boy? How are you, Abe?"
Hello, friend. How are you? Is there anyone here from Thorn Town? For those of you curious as to why I should inquire, it all began in Thorn Town in a 2-short stop. The citizens demanded a speech, but I knew that the train was only stopping for water and would not be there long. So I illustrated my quandary with a story conveying the point that if I gave a speech at every stop, I would not only not arrive for my inauguration, but perhaps not even to finish my first term as president. Well, as I feared, the train pulled away, and I had not finished the tale. A number of intrepid citizens from Thorn Town ran in pursuit behind the train, to hear the end, but to no avail. The iron horse will always best a human leg. Much to my surprise, I now see many of the Thorn Town residents here in Lebanon. A little worse for wear maybe, but obviously eager to hear the end of my tale. Apparently, the iron horse can be beaten by a man's leg, as long as he knows the shortcut and rides a fast horse. I dare not disappoint the intrepid and fleet citizens of Thorn Town, but could not pick up where I left off without equally disappointing the citizens of Lebanon. So I began at the beginning, and I end at the end, train willing. I begin my tale with a young man who saw a political appointment from the day he first saw light. Unfortunately, he was blessed with few talents beyond the ardent desire, and so was never selected for all his efforts. Then, one day, his luck changed, for there was a public position so low that it might as well be at the bottom of a cave. Best yet, no one wanted that position. All he had to do was show up in town at the appointed time, and he would achieve his dream as the only candidate. So early in the morning on the appointed day, our young man set out on his journey with his horse, Bessie, a trusty mare, to seek out his future in public service. It was a beautiful day, but much to the distress of our young man, Bessie decided that it was a great day to smell the roses, and to eat the grass, and to look at the trees, and pretty much anything to the north, south, east, and west. Progress, if it can be called that, was agonizingly slow. Finally, the sun set, and the young man rode into town, presented to the nominating committee, who, unfortunately to the man, had left for the day. They decided that the position was not worth the time, since no one wanted it. So now you know the story of the politician's horse, and I'm sure you can appreciate my dilemma. I hear the train bell, and so it is now time we part. I leave not knowing when or whether I may return, and with a task before me greater than what rested upon George Washington. Without the assistance of the divine being who ever attended him, I cannot succeed. With the assistance, I cannot fail. Trusting in him who can go with me and remain with you and be everywhere for good, let us confidently hope that all will yet be well. To his care commending you, as I hope in your prayers, and you commend me, I bid you an affectionate farewell.
The next 4 years were some of the most tumultuous times ever faced by our country. Roughly 3.5 million men fought in the Civil War on both sides. 620,000 soldiers died, with many more wounded or debilitated. Entire areas of the South were laid to waste. It was the scourge described by Lincoln in his second inaugural address, where all the wealth piled by the bondsman's 250 years of unrequited toil shall be sunk until every drop of blood drawn with the lash shall be paid by another drawn with the sword. Lincoln returned to Boone County in April 1865, accompanied by his son Willie. There were crowds waiting for them, but his train did not stop. This time, there would be no speeches or tall tales, for Lincoln himself was one of the casualties of the Civil War. And as Secretary of War Edwin Stanton said, "Now he belongs to the ages."
We hope you enjoyed our spooky presentation, and if you did, consider donating to SullivanMunce You can easily donate via PayPal by clicking the donate button on our website at SullivanMunce.org, or right on our YouTube channel by clicking on the PayPal icon. All donations for GhostWalk up to a total of $5,000 will be matched thanks to a matching grant from the Community Foundation of Boone County. This means if we raise $5,000, the Community Foundation of Boone County will match it with another $5,000. And a huge thank you to our sponsors for this year. Wilbur CPAs has been providing quality, professional accounting and tax services for small businesses, individuals, and non-profit organizations for over 16 years. David Roush Studio, recognized for its award-winning experience in lifestyle, workplace, and civic realms, the David Roush Studio provides architectural, interior design, planning, and graphic design. Mid-States Insurance has been a part of Zionsville for over 20 years and is happy to help with such an important part of the community as SullivanMunce Cultural Center. The Boone County Convention and Visitors Bureau promotes and supports tourism in Boone County with a focus on attracting more visitors to Boone County hotels and bed and breakfast facilities, and seeking new events which will utilize our county facilities. Zionsville Eye Care is an independent optometry practice that's been a proud local staple for more than 35 years. Their experienced and caring professionals are dedicated to providing the highest quality, personalized eye care for the whole family. And of course, a special thanks to you for watching and supporting local arts and history. We hope you had a spooky good time and have a happy Halloween.